One of the most common misconceptions about the Aztec is that they had no writing system. But in reality, the knowledge of Mesoamerican peoples were recorded in elaborately painted manuscripts known as codices. They presided in large libraries, decorating the walls and filling up entire rooms in royal palaces and temples. But as a result of the conquest, only a select few remain. But for those that did survive, there is much we can learn through the beauty and depth of each page. Hello everyone, I'm Chaaya, your local Aztec Vtuber. Today, we will learn about one of my favorite subjects in Mesoamerica, the codices. They have served as an endless source of inspiration and never failed to captivate me as an artist. This is a huge subject, so we will focus on introducing what they are, how they work, and the current surviving pieces. Without further ado, let's get started. What are the codices? Codices were the primary medium in which information was recorded in Mesoamerica. Genealogy, medicine, religion, science, history, all sorts of records were carefully hand-painted onto these precious manuscripts. For the purpose of this lesson, we will focus on the Mixtec Codices, which are the only surviving pre-Hispanic manuscripts of central Mexico. There are about 15 in total. For the Mayan codices, only 4 remain. Though I won't discuss them in depth, a lot of the concepts we cover today will apply to them as well. The codices employed a complex writing system based on pictorial images, presenting information through pictograms, ideograms, and phonetic signs. Pictograms are direct representations of objects or actions. In this example, the imagery portrays a man getting his nose pierced. Ideograms are symbolic representations of ideas or concepts. Here, an arrow is shot into a mountain with a mask, symbolizing that this place had been conquered. Note that the mountain plus mask is also a phonetic representation of the place's name. Which leads us to our last group, phonetic signs. These are pictures that denote a phonetic pronunciation of a word. For example, 6 monkey. This does not have anything to do with 6 monkeys, instead it shows the reader how to say someone's name. Each page incorporated a mix of these 3 types of imagery, encoding layers upon layers of information that only skilled readers could decipher. I'd also like to point out elements of the Codex visual style. Notice that there is very little overlap amongst the pictures. They all tend to make up their own individual space on the page. Consequently, the style lacks depth of field, emphasizing concepts over realistic representations of our 3-dimensional world. Also note how the characters are portrayed in a side profile, often with very limited emotional expression on their faces. These characteristics give the codices a very clean look, rich with detail yet open to interpretation. During the post-classic era, extensive libraries populated the ancient cities of Mesoamerica. They were known as Amoxcalli, which translates to House of Books. They were commonly located in places and temples. Some famous examples include the libraries of Tenochtitlan, described by the conquistadors as massive rooms within Moctezuma's palace, filled to the brim with codices of all kinds. Another example is the Library of Texcoco, built by the legendary poet King Nezahualcóyotl. These images here are artistic interpretations of such libraries. Sadly, due to the destruction following the conquest, we can only imagine what an Amoxcalli was truly like. In their prime, rulers, scribes, and students from across the land would consult these archives for all sorts of knowledge, much like we do so today in our communities and universities. But the codices were very different in comparison to the books we know now. This had to do with how they were made. Unlike modern books, which are bound to a singular spine, pre-Hispanic codices were screenfold in nature, meaning that a long continuous strip was folded into an accordion style. They were created from materials such as amate paper, deerskin, cotton, and agave fiber. The selected material was flattened and joined together to create a long continuous sheet. The surface was then coated with white lime gesso, which was polished to create a smooth painting surface. Here on the left, we have a glimpse of how amate paper was traditionally made. Treated strips of amate bark were threaded together and flattened with the stone to create paper sheets. Once these preparations were complete, indigenous scribes known as tlacuiloque hand-painted the codex contents. Tlacuiloque is the plural form of the word, and tlacuilo is the singular form. The word translates to one who writes or paints. The Tlacuiloque utilized a variety of tools such as brushes, shelf palettes, and a wide variety of pigments sourced from natural minerals, insects, and plants. As a Tlacuilo myself, you can see these tools floating around in my room. Teehee. Does that look familiar? That's how they are in my room. By analyzing the codex pigments, researchers were able to deduce the various steps in the painting process. First, a light sketch was applied, followed by color blocks, and finishing with a black outline around the figures. Though this was common, it was not the case for all codices. Lastly, since many of the pigments were made from plant-based materials, when a scribe wanted to change color, they simply cleaned the brush in their mouth. If you see me with the brush in my mouth, like I'm just cleaning my brush, okay? The role of Tlacuilo was essential and of much prestige. It required fine artistic skill as well as specialized understanding of language and culture. Training began since childhood and was open to men, women, nobles, and commoners alike. The only requirement was an affinity to the arts. When selected, students had to complete extensive training at the Calmecac, a rigorous school generally reserved for the nobility and the wealthy. There, aspiring Tlacuiloque specialized in particular fields, spanning from religion, economics, medicine, and much, much more. After that, they spent the rest of their days in service of their respective field, preserving the sacred knowledge of their collective society. Here is a passage from the Florentine Codex, describing the cultural importance of the Tlacuilo. Let's read it together. The scribe. Writings, ink are his special skills. He is a craftsman, an artist, a user of charcoal, a drawer with charcoal, a painter who dissolves colors, grinds pigments, uses colors. The good scribe is honest, circumspect, far-sighted, pensive, a judge of colors, an applier of the colors, who makes shadows, forms feet, face, hair. He paints, he applies colors, makes shadows, draws gardens, paints flowers, creates works of art. The bad scribe is dull, detestable, irritating, a fraud, a cheat. He paints without lusters, ruins colors, blurs them, paints askew, acts impetuously, hastily, without reflection. Do you guys think that I am a good Tlacuilo or a bad Tlacuilo? Let me show you guys some examples of my hard work. If you're not impressed, here I have another example. One of my proudest works.
Best Tlacuilo in the Empire.
Thank you! Yes, I'm so honored, chat. Now that we have covered how the codices were made, it's time to ask, how were they used? As mentioned before, the codices preserved information of all types. Here we can see a few examples. Genealogy was extensively recorded in order to legitimize one's claim to power via bloodlines. Tribute was detailed across countless manuscripts to keep conquered cities in check. Ancient tales were preserved, which were then reenacted by dedicated performers and storytellers. And sacred knowledge about the gods were elaborated across colorful pages, which priests referred to for various rituals and divinations. And that's just to name a few. Now, do note the two pictures with an asterisk. These are taken from colonial codices, produced after the conquest, but I included them here as visual examples of how such information was recorded in their pre-Hispanic counterparts. Codices were generally reserved for the nobility, away from the common folk. Knowledge is power, after all. When they weren't archived away in the Amoxcalli, codices were spread out and displayed on interior walls of houses, as if they were mural art. It's one of the unique advantages of their screenfold nature. Not only that, this format enabled nonlinear study. A reader could choose to display a select range of pages, they could observe the beginning and end of the codex at the same time, or even flip through it like a modern book. Pictorial contents were meant to be read aloud by trained specialists, known as tlamatinime, which translates to wise people. The singular form of the word is tlamatini. These wise people consisted of priests, doctors, administrators, teachers, and much more. As such, readings vary depending on the codex contents and the person reading it. Additionally, as was often the case with historical and religious tales, codices served more as a storyboard, providing a solid foundation yet open for interpretation. As for how they were read, it was really quite varied. In the case of the Mixtec codices, they were generally read from right to left. But of course, as you can see in this diagram, there are a few outliers. One thing we do see in common is the zigzag reading pattern. Let's check it out. Here in the Codex Uches, we start at the top right corner and meander through the sequence of images in a zigzag, guided by these red dividers. Whee, zigzag! So do you guys see the red dividers? Right here. Codex Uses is the same, but with a twist. As you can see, we still start at the top right corner and zigzag across, but the catch is that this codex is supposed to be read vertically. Here it is in its proper orientation. Keep in mind, these codices could also be flipped over, containing another sequence of pictures on the other side. Here is an example of the obverse side of the Codex Uches, which we looked at first. This side of the codex was painted at a different time as the reverse side, and most likely by a different artist. And well, it had its own kind of shenanigans. Was this original style or an artist wanting to be experimental? Sadly, we really don't have enough surviving manuscripts to suggest a definitive norm, which leads us to our next question. What happened to them? Shortly after the conquest, the Spanish conducted mass burnings of these manuscripts. This is probably one of the largest destructions of knowledge ever recorded. Ages of history, science, religion, medicine, and philosophy were incinerated. This was all under the pretense of dismantling so-called idolatry and furthering the Spanish efforts to convert the indigenous people to Christianity. But in reality, the burnings were systematic, aimed at weakening indigenous power by erasing their culture and history. Luckily, not all was lost. Though only a select few pre-Hispanic codices remain, many documents were recreated during the colonial period. Remember I mentioned how some codices served more as a storyboard? This is because Tlamatinime and Tlaquiloque had conducted such knowledge to memory. Losing a codex was just one half of a puzzle, and indigenous scribes took great efforts to reconstruct them. This was done under Spanish rule and supervision, which was less than ideal, but it's thanks to these efforts that we can sit here today and talk about such things. Here on this slide, I have an example of a pre-Hispanic codex on the left and a colonial codex on the right. Can you point out the differences between the two?
Oh, the difference is painful to look at.
Oh, yeah. So the main differences are the addition of Spanish glosses using a phonetic alphabet, depth of field noted by the 3D perspective of the temple, human figures having slightly more realistic proportions, rendering clothing folds, and book binding. Despite the differences, Mesoamerican writing style persisted, just now with a bit of Spanish flair. We can talk about the colonial codices in the future, but for now, which pre-Hispanic codices remain? The surviving codices can be divided into 3 groups. First, we have the ritual codices, commonly referred to as the Borgia group. These codices were religious in nature, containing depictions of gods, rituals, and the sacred calendar. They are painted in a similar style as our next group, the Mixtec histories. These codices detail the local history of the New Savi people, aka the Mixtec. It covers royal genealogies and important historical figures like 8-deer jaguar claw. Lastly, we have the Mayan codices, which, like the Borgia group, were religious and divinatory in nature. They depicted gods and the sacred calendar. Also note the distinct art style and glyphs in comparison to the Mixtec codices. Now, let's review all of them. The ritual group consists of 5 to 6 codices. We have Codex Borgia, Codex Cospi, Codex Fejer Mayer, Codex Laud, Codex Vaticanus B, and Mexican Manuscript number 20. Mexican Manuscript number 20 is considered a minor codex as it is only 1 page. Next, we have the Mixtec histories, which comprise about 7. I say about because not all sources agree on the groupings, but here are the most notable ones. We have the Codex Zuchnutal, Codex Colombino Becker I, Codex Becker II, Codex Bodley, Codex Selden, Codex Vindobonensis, and Codex Egerton. Finally, we have the Maya Codices, which comprise of 4 documents. We have Codex Paris, Codex Dresden, Codex Madrid, and Maya Codex of Mexico. Listing them all out, it really is tragic to see that these are our only surviving manuscripts. And the reason these survived is because they were taken to Europe to be collected by foreigners. It's actually how most of these codices obtained their modern names. They were named after the ones who owned the manuscript. Codex Borgia, for example, was named after Cardinal Stefano Borgia, who collected the document for his museum. But before Stefano, the owners of the Codex Borgia were not so kind. The sacred document was used as a plaything for children, and it's how one of its pages was burned away. Sadly, this sort of neglect was common for the other manuscripts as well. Today, there are efforts to detach the codices from such names and instead bestow them with a name that denotes the original culture and purpose. The new name for Codex Borgia is Codex Yowali e Ecatl. So, where does that leave us now? Today, many of the pre-Hispanic codices are part of collections overseas, stored away from sight in order to best preserve them. Pictures you see online and the ones displayed on museums are often facsimiles, which are recreations of the original manuscripts. That goes for all the codex pictures I use today as well. The elements have not been kind to these manuscripts, but like our great ancestors, we can do our efforts to preserve their knowledge and beauty in our hearts. And with that, my friends, we have reached the end. Did you learn something new? If you did, let me know in the comments and give this video a like. We still only scratched the surface of this massive subject, so if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Also, my full history notes and sources are available on Patreon for free. Yep, you heard me right, for free. They are linked below. Lastly, if you want to hang out with fellow Mesoamerican enthusiasts, join the party on Discord or chat with us live on stream both on Twitch and YouTube. Until next time, my Citlaltin, bye-bye!